Morning all, welcome back. I would just want to say how well I think this jersey matches this hat, even though it's a different eagle. So there you go. I want to talk about the Capitals, but we're going to start with what everybody's been talking about on the ones I did yesterday. And all right, so the core six. We'll start with that with the Capitals. Kuznetsov, Vrana, and Wilson. I have as the three forwards for each team. And I try to restrict it to players that are age 26 and younger. Because it's the idea of, okay, what does the future of this franchise look like? On the blue line, I have Karlsson and Orlov. They're older. Why do I have them there? Because I don't see a defenseman right now on this roster who's young that I think is going to replace Karlsson and Orlov. So when you see a team that has veterans in these spots, that means they don't have those replacements yet. And when I get to Pittsburgh, it's going to get really interesting because a lot of their core is older, and I don't know that we know who's going to replace guys like Crosby and Malkin. And then in net, of course, I have Samsonov, who, effectively is now the starting goaltender with the departure of Holtby. So that's why the core six are the way that they are. If a player is, I don't know, say 29, I don't look at him and go, okay, 5-10 years from now, he's definitely still going to be there. That's the idea of the core six. The idea that this should be the core going forward. That's the reason you don't see a number 8 on there, because his contract's up in a year. Does he stay? Does he go? And his center, Backstrom, does Backstrom stick around for 5 more years? Who knows? So that's why the core six is set up the way that it is. All right, so now that that's all cleared up, right? Let's take a look at the last 3 seasons for the Capitals. 2017-2018, they had 105 points. They had 104 the year after, so they only dropped 1 point from where they were as the Stanley Cup champion. And then in 2019-2020, it actually prorated out to 107 points. This is a very good regular season team. The problem is they've lost in the first round of the playoffs 2 years in a row. And there was some debate about whether or not they were really trying all that hard in the return. Now, here's the thing. I can understand people saying, well, it was a bubble environment. Maybe they had a harder time. Okay, but it says something about a team's competitiveness if in a situation where it's labeled as playoffs, your team doesn't play very well, and if there is some question of your heart and desire and really it doesn't look great. Now, here's the other problem. When you look at who's out, Holtby's gone to Vancouver. Kovalchuk's a UFA, could technically still come back to Washington. I don't think he does. Leipzig, he left. Move on. Radko Gudas is gone and Travis Boyd's gone. So here's the thing. This is still the same core that's lost its last 2 first-round playoff matchups. And there really wasn't a whole lot that they did in order to fix this. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go across to the big ads. Justin Schultz could be a steal. Henrik Lundqvist could be a big deal for them as the backup. But I don't know that either of them get this team back into a Stanley Cup spot. And it's one of those weird things where if Washington is really, really good during the regular season, it won't surprise anybody. And if they lose in round 1 in this division, I don't know that that's going to surprise anybody either. And so that's the issue as I see it with the Washington Capitals. Now, the Hockey News has them 7th in their power rankings. Sports Forecaster has them predicted to be 2nd in the Metro, which we know the divisions are changed. And I have them 3rd in the division. It is a tough call. I have them 3rd. They could finish 1st. They could finish 6th. It is that Eastern Division that really it's almost impossible to tell who's going to finish where. So I have them 3rd, much like the Canadian Division. And we'll see. We'll see where they end up. Now, on the too low side of things, I think Kuznetsov's point totals last year were too low. And I think because he's the first-line center at this stage, as Backstrom's going to play less, his points should go up. 63 games, 19 goals, 33 assists, 52 points. And I threw Schultz on the board because his offense has to improve with Washington, right? 46 games, 3 goals, 9 assists, 12 points. And if you subscribe to the idea that maybe Jack Johnson dragged his play down, okay, then that'll help when he's in Washington as well, that he's not with Jack Johnson. I don't have an opinion on that. I think that he had his own struggles, whether or not Johnson was there with him. Now, the rookie to watch, Connor McMichael. So I've talked about how this core 6, the defense is a little older. Up front, Kuznetsov, Vrana, and Wilson are all still relatively young. And McMichael could be that ace in the hole. Ever since they drafted him, he was seen as a guy who could be a steal. And now we're going to see whether or not he is. And yeah, I mean, this is a team that we know is going to be able to score, and they should be fun in the regular season. And McMichael may eventually be the replacement for Backstrom. So there's that whole... I didn't throw him in the core six because Kuznetsov's still pretty young too. Goals for. This team had 3.42 goals per game, which was second in the NHL last year. Goals against, problematic. 3.07, 18th. That's how Samsonov started getting the inside track towards that goaltending job, because he did outperform Braden Holtby. Power play, this team had a 19.44% power play, which was 17th in the NHL. That seems to be low for a team with Ovechkin playing on the power play. Penalty kill, 82.57%, which was 6th. Very solid penalty kill for them. So the special teams look kind of different, considering the offense and the defense. It kind of switches spots there, where on the special teams they're better defensively, and we'll see whether or not that continues this year. Already mentioned the big ads. Already went over the core six as well. And so we'll get to the coach. Peter Laviolette takes over as the coach for the Washington Capitals, and this was a job that we heard various rumors of various coaches, but Laviolette makes a lot of sense. You want a veteran coach, you want an NHL coach to replace Todd Reirden, and there will be people who watch this and say, hey, you can take those first round losses and throw them straight on the coach who just lost his job this summer. And I can't make any comparisons of that towards how they're going to be this year until we see how things go with Laviolette, and we'll see if that does indeed prove to be the case. Brian McClellan, of course, is still the general manager. He has an unenviable job in that he has to find a way to try to keep Ovechkin past this year as his contract's up. And he has to find a way as well to make sure that they're still bringing in more prospects and more young players in order to replenish this roster, rather than see it get older and then fall off the rails as a regular season team as well. You can't really tell when it's going to happen, when teams are going to go from being a contender to just not being in that conversation anymore. And it can happen very quickly. Very quickly. So it's on McClellan to try to make sure that he balances the cap, he balances the needs of all the players that are on the team, and keeping the young kids coming in that can push those guys out of a job at some point. Glass half full. Well, you have the elite regular seasons if you're a glass half full fan. This is a team that will not let you down in the regular season. And that's been their history going back to the 80s. Going back to the mid-80s. This was a team that could always win in the regular season. Playoffs, well, in 98 they get to the final. 2018 they win the Stanley Cup, which would mean every 20 years, yes, they make it to the Stanley Cup final. And also, Ovechkin does seem to continue to deny the aging process. He is a guy that every year we think, well, he should fall off the pace a little bit with his goal scoring. And then it doesn't happen. And I mean, it's something I've talked about for the last 4 years, and I've just kind of given up on it. If he scores 50 goals in 56 games this year, I don't think any of us would necessarily be surprised. He's that elite. That's why when people ask if they think he can catch Gretzky, if he wants to, he'll catch Gretzky for the goals record. Absolutely. Do I think he will? He can. It's just a matter of how long he plays in the NHL, and that comes back to Brian McClellan. Glass half empty. This team, some of the core players are a year older, and Backstrom, to me, while he's still a very good center, the point totals have dropped a bit. Ovechkin's point per game totals have been up and down over the years, and I do wonder if they're going to go back up. Notice I don't have him on the too low list in terms of how many points he scored this year. So at some point, Ovechkin will drop off, and at some point, that will probably drag down Backstrom's totals as well. And then just the fact that this division is so very tough. And we'll get to that in a second here, because this kind of illustrates just how tough this is, that a team that's projected to get 107 points last year, when you look at the record against teams that are supposed to be in their division, it was tough. And I think it's going to be that way for everybody. The next big hype, I went with Hendrix Lapierre, who likely would have gone higher in the draft if not for injury last year. And so as long as he's healthy and good to go, I think the hype's going to be there. And, you know, he's going to have his challenges along the way, but I think he may very well be one of those top forwards that steps in when an Ovechkin or a Backstrom moves along, then you're going to need, I mean, McMichael's likely in this year, and then to me, Lapierre's the next one in that pipeline. And that's the key. The key thing when you're general manager is when you're drafting later in the first round, you know, find that player, that diamond in the rough, find that guy who might have dropped because he was injured. Now, month by month last year, they were relatively consistent, at least through the first 4 months. 9-2-3 in October, 10-2-2 in November, 8-5 in December, 8-3 in January, and then February they dropped 4-7-1, and in March they only won 2 out of 5. They were 2-1-2. So it did look like things were kind of falling off in that last 6 weeks of hockey. And then you get the pause, and then they just didn't look right in the return. They just didn't look right. And it was through the round robin, and then it was that first round matchup, and it just wasn't there. And now when you look at their division, it's going to be tough. Against Boston last year, they were 2-1. Against Buffalo, they were 1-0-1. Against New Jersey, they were 2-2. Against the Islanders, they were 2-2. Against the Rangers, 1-1-1. Against Philadelphia, they were 1-3. And against Pittsburgh, 2-1. So their overall record against teams that are projected to be in their own division, 11-10-2. Meaning they won a little bit less than half of them. They end up over 500 because of the 2 extra time losses. But that shows you how tough this division is going to be. This may be a division nobody runs away with, and could be a lot of really tough battles night in and night out. We'll see how that goes. I think Washington's going to be a very interesting team to watch, and we'll see whether or not the aging process catches up with a couple of veterans, and then we'll see whether or not a guy like Wilson or Vrana takes that next step scoring wise, and how this goes for them, and if Kuznetsov comes back to those elite totals that he has shown he can achieve in previous seasons. But again, for me, it'll be interesting to see how that defense goes. Carlson had a great year. Can he repeat it? We'll see. But Washington should be fascinating to watch. Let me know where you guys think the Capitals end up finishing in the 2020-2021 season. And yes, we will still refer to it as 2020-2021, even though the season will start in 2021. That's just, they've done it 2 times before. They're doing it again now. It's really not a big deal. But it's the internet, so everything's a big deal, right? All right, let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.